I wanted only one thing from the fifth and final Gourmet Detective Mystery film, and unfortunately, they did not give me that. This is Rue the Day. It was released in 2020. It's directed by Mark Jean, and I won't say what that one thing is just now because it is technically a spoiler, so I will leave that for a little bit. But the rest of the film is actually really enjoyable, and I was honestly thinking they've turned things around. And I had a lot of fun with it, and there are some specific moments that I can point to and really praise. But there's one moment that is just so terrible. It is laughable. And it makes me so relieved that this is the final film. I know I didn't have to watch the final film because the previous four are increasingly diabolical. But at the same time, I did. I had to watch it just to say I'd completed the series, and I'm so glad it's over. But as I said, the journey with this one was actually not bad, but it just left me with a really horrible feeling. And Rue the Day was released in 2020. It's directed by Mark Jean, and it's a really fun narrative. This is about a chef's book, which I'd never heard of, but apparently it's a book that a chef has, and they pass it down on generations, and each generation adds their own recipes to it. It sounds really fascinating. And Henry is actually hired to place a bid for an anonymous bidder for this book, and it turns out that the book is not there. And there are murders connected, and I don't want to go into too much more detail about that because it is a really interesting narrative and a really fun story, and there are a lot of potential suspects and really great motives, and it's not predictable, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought it worked very well for 95% of it. I still don't like Henry. I still think he is annoying, but I love the fact that Maggie makes it aware that she also finds him annoying sometimes. They get on really well as a couple. I think they work well as a pairing. But one of my favourite bits, and I genuinely laughed out loud, when Henry's annoying personality is being pointed out by the other characters, I like it. And it's the bit where he was talking about something really passionately and he says, I could go on, and Maggie says, don't or no or something like that. And I just love the fact that she responded in a way that I was definitely feeling. I also love the fact that it's not completely predictable with regards to characters' actions. For example, they spot a vehicle at one point, and there's something significant about this. And Henry says, Maggie, let's go. And Maggie says no. And she gives a reason for it. And I love this for two reasons. One, it shows that Henry isn't in charge, even though he often acts like he is. And two, it's a break from the mold, because usually in films like this or crime dramas, there will be a chase. If there is an opportunity for a high-speed chase, most of the films will put it in. And I like the fact that actually they went a more believable route. And I rather enjoyed that, and I really appreciated that. Another bit that I loved involves Henry's father. And some time has passed since the previous film. I wasn't expecting his father to be in this, but actually I really enjoyed the character and what he brought to this, and I loved what he brought to the Roux. I will say no more on that, but you'll know exactly what I mean. I thought that was brilliant, quite funny, definitely a nice amount of comedy in this film. And I thought everything worked really well, and then it didn't. So I will explain now with a spoiler warning why it didn't work, but if you've seen or listened to my previous 4 discussions, you'll know exactly why. Well, I guess my previous 3 discussions, because this wasn't an issue in the first film. So spoilers from now. I won't explain who was responsible, but I will explain the final scenes. So at the end, they work out who it is, and they go to investigate this, and for the 5th film in a row, the culprit points a gun at them, demands that Maggie puts her gun down, and has one of them held at gunpoint. 5 films in a row, they've done the exact same ending, just with a different character in a different location, and I would be ashamed to write for this series, to have my name as a writer to this series, because that's despicable. And as I mentioned with the previous films, on its own, that's absolutely fine. The ending works well enough. But when you're writing for a series, it's understandable that the viewer is going to have seen the previous films and they're going to know how they ended. So they're going to be wanting something different. And to give them the exact same ending with a few small tweaks, 5 films in a row, it's almost like the writers don't know that there's another way to end a story like this. It's laughably bad. It's like they've never read or seen or watched another crime thing in their life, and this is the only thing they know, and that's absolutely horrendous. I just don't understand how they got away with doing 5 films with near identical endings. I'm honestly shocked that Hallmark was willing to stoop to such low quality. And I'm glad it's over, because I couldn't bear a 6th film where the culprit points a gun at the detective and at Henry, demands Maggie drops her gun, and then points a gun at one of them, and then something happens to save the day. I've seen it once. I've seen it 5 times. I don't want to see it again. I'm glad the series is over. Roux the Day is a significant improvement on the previous films. It really is a quality narrative, and I was genuinely thinking maybe they hired some new writers, maybe things were going in a better direction. Not enough to save the series, but enough for this to be a good film. And then we had the identical ending for the 5th time in a row. It's so unbelievable that they thought that was okay, that it's nothing but laughable. And as much as I did actually enjoy the rest of this particular film, I'm glad the Gourmet Detective series has come to an end.